Little Red Hot Chili Peppers.
You know,
Kind of hard to beat Flea and Anthony Kiedis together.
feeling the 90s today, so might stay on that theme this week. But welcome back, another episode of Pints and Politics, episode 48. This is the
Dave Stewart episode.
Yeah, man. Another
RBI back baseball.
Look, we're children of the 80s and the 90s, so we're showing our age when we talk about RBI baseball. But if you're our age, you know.
I can still feel the blister on my thumbs from playing on the old Nintendo controllers.
But, Dave Stewart, in looking it up, I didn't realize he was the World Series MVP for the A's back in '89.
I didn't watch baseball. I just played baseball.
Damn good pitcher. The Bash Brothers back in the day.
Oh, yeah, Mark McGwire and Canseco.
Yeah, man, so I was a big fan. So
I think it's one of the reasons I got a mullet back in the day.
Yeah, should blame it on them. Well, thanks for joining us on this episode. Our weekend review, man, had a lot going on. Judicial races took top billing, especially in the papers.
Thank our sponsors first. Thank you to Chip Comer and Comer Distributing.
Yeah.
Today's beer of the day is distributed by Chip Comer.
Yep.
And it was an easy grab, quick and easy.
It was. I know this is sort of one of my favorite old school light beers. It's not yours. The two listeners know that you love your Bud Light.
Chip's gonna kill you. You keep talking about
But yeah, easy drinking Miller Lite. Everybody knows what it tastes like by now. So, but again, thanks to Comer Distributing for supporting the podcast for sure. Back in the news was us electing judges.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about that in a later episode. We're going to bring on a special guest, Representative Tommy Pope. He is, y'all probably know him as the sexiest man alive from 1997. Or he was our solicitor that prosecuted the Susan Smith case, or his court TV fame. But now he is just serving.
Everyone's mama knows him from court TV.
He is just serving the, is he 45?
I don't know.
But he's over a little west of us. So I'm 46 in Rock Hill. Brandon's 48 up north.
I actually share a district with him, and I share a district with you. So everything on the right side of 274, headed up to North Carolina, is me. Everything on the left side is Tommy.
Yep.
So he represents North Clover.
Yep. Yeah. So we'll have him on the episode to talk about the judicial races and also, in particular, our race here in the 16th Circuit. We made some news for all the wrong reasons, I would say.
I think the news says wrong reasons.
We did not want that outcome, but when you're only given one applicant, your choices are limited. And we questioned the process of how we only got one candidate.
Whenever I buy a car and I go on, one of these websites and I'm searching, if it only gives me one result, I'm going to another website.
Well, I mean,
I'm not just stuck with buying that one car.
Well, and being in the construction business, you're always getting two quotes for everything at least, to make sure true measure of a market and those types of things. And so, we'll touch on that a little more in depth this week. Also, man, we went to the University of South Carolina.
We kicked off
on
Tuesday morning.
Yeah, Tuesday morning we went, and again, this is an ongoing relationship that we're having with the university. Obviously, proximity helps, but us building relationships within the university. Dr. Julius Friedrichsen, with the AI conversations we had from last year, we're continuing to try to see what's going on in the university in regards to AI, and he is the vice president there of research.
And I continue to be impressed every time that we learn more of what the university's doing.
Right.
Being a Clemson guy, I still have to throw in those jabs every time we go there, but I am impressed with what USC is doing and how forward-thinking that they are being, and looking at the next revolution instead of waiting on things to happen.
Right, and when we first got back into session, I had reached out to Dr. Julius Friedrichsen and asked him to come over to the Blott building to see if he could, engage in some conversations in regards to the research he's doing that incorporates AI, right? So my focus being the medical sub-chair of 3M, I wanted to see how the research he was doing with the Brain Health Network and with AI and how that can improve health outcomes.
Yes.
So I pulled you, Cox, and some other members because we all have sort of our passions.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, Julius is one of the smartest guys we know. Why don't we just all take the best use of his time? He comes over once and let's just pepper him, you know?
Yes.
And so I thought we had a really good engaging conversation that then spawned this next visit.
And you can see our wheels turning the whole time.
Oh man. The what they're doing over there at the College of Engineering and Computing is just amazing. It makes me feel as a history major that I wasted my time as an undergraduate at USC because, you know, and again, not to knock liberal arts degrees, but, you know, we're learning about South Carolina history and Southern politics and the civil rights movements, other things in my major. The PhD students and the grad students at that engineering school are doing things with AI and research and defense contracting.
They all have 2 degrees.
Studies. Yeah. and then doing research that will yield practical applications that keep our soldiers safe and keep our country safe, you know?
And South Carolina's in a unique position.
Yeah.
Because they kind of started with tech early, but we're also a military-friendly state.
Right.
So it becomes very important to have that relationship and the way that they're able to work.
Yeah, correct. I mean, it was fascinating. I mean, we were only there for about an hour and a half.
I'm scared to talk about what we talked about because I don't know what I can say and what I can't say.
Right.
You know, but just trust me. I mean, you said that about history. I feel like South Carolina is moving in the direction where they will be part of the history books.
Man, I'm telling you, and just how they're working as a research university with public-private partnerships, right?
Yeah.
They're bringing in, you know, some folks who are in the data sort of space. They're bringing in people who are in like military contracting space, you know, and engaging those end users to collaborate together to find these, like I said, real-world applications for the research and the technology that's coming out of it.
One of the stats that I was very impressed with, I think they were saying the graduates that work there to get their degree is essentially paid off their first year.
Yeah.
The salary, because it's just such a in-demand job that you can get the degree and you've got a great return on investment.
Yeah. And you know, listening to some of the students talk about how they really appreciate the hands-on training that they're getting from commercial and industrial grade machinery.
Yeah.
That is in the university. It's there. You can go kick the tires. You can run the machines that are actually used at companies in, say, the military defense space.
Yes.
Or, you know, and so that having that tangible real world experience as a student sets them up for that postgraduate or PhD career. So
and you know, with Duke bringing his company here, starting it here, leaving the military contracting space, and saying, how can we partner? I mean, it's so innovative to mix the students and the private industry together.
Yeah.
To get to create
I know.
real solutions for the real world.
It's an interesting model for sure. So, and again, there'll be more to that, I'm sure. I mean,
Yes.
it was just a great conversation that we're having with you know, the folks over at USC. What else did we do this week?
We did our midweek sips for the first time.
Oh yeah.
So we have to talk about that.
Yeah, that's right. You know, that's just a shortened version of a pint, right? So we called it our sips. And yeah, man, I thought we did pretty good for the first time. I mean,
We did good to not have Tad. I mean, it was bad audio, you know. I mean,
Yeah.
You could tell it wasn't professionally produced, but it was just with a cell phone midweek and just try to let our constituents know, because too often we're getting beat to the punch with a false narrative
Yes.
over what's going on. So we're going to start doing the midweek sips to let everyone know what happened
Yep.
midweek.
Yeah, so some of the challenges in the social media world is anyone and everyone can go and say anything. and there's no checking, there's no verification. I think we talked about this a few times last year when we were talking about, I can't remember what bill it was. Was it Save Women's Sports bill?
Help Not Harm.
The Help Not Harm
Pissed
bill.
me off.
And we literally had some members who were throwing out misleading statements or incomplete statements mid-debate of the bill. Because their version of an amendment did not get added to the bill.
Yeah.
And they said, because we voted down an amendment that they put up,
63 rhinos chose not to punish doctors for castrating kids.
Yeah, right.
Which is just an outright lie. If your rep shared that, you need to just go ahead and go after them right now. Because they are I'm not going to cuss. They're a liar.
Well, and again, that's the frustrating part. When you go down and you're serving, your district, you're just trying to do your job. You're trying to make the best decisions that you can make that represent your people. And then while you're in the process of doing your job, you've got
colleagues that complain that you don't work with them.
Yeah, it's literally like you got colleagues, giving you the wet willy while you're trying to do serious work.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And it's like, folks, the debate isn't even over. The bill has not been voted on even yet, and you're already posting judgment on social media and then misleading people.
It's the difference between policy and politics. And what type of legislator do you want?
So we thought it was a good idea that as we begin the session to go ahead and start getting out a 5-10 minute sort of midweek update, which we call the SIPs, to at least give how we see things.
Yeah.
So we'll be doing that on the regular from now on.
Mainly after Wicked Wednesdays.
Yes.
As long as we get out in a decent time. Some of those have went to 1 o'clock in the morning. So it's not going to do us very well to do that.
Yeah. So we talked about a little bit of this on our midweek SIP. A couple of the things that were going to be on the agenda were being read across the desk. One of those was House Bill 3927. That's the one ending DEI. And
that's a bill that's been worked on early on.
Yep.
And we found it funny that as we're going to introduce the bill, another group sent out a letter.
Yep.
Basically saying we're demanding that you stop all DEI right now, and then only ask certain members to sign it.
Right. Yeah. And then all of a sudden we're
getting
DEI
messages. Why didn't you sign on to this? Because I was never shown it.
And so this bans taxpayer-funded DEI offices, training, and hiring quotas, prevents agencies from renaming DEI programs to something else, and ensures hiring and education decisions are based on, here we go, merit and nothing else. And, I reshared something that our caucus put out about ending DEI because this is a sensitive topic, and it's a serious one, and we got to make sure that we're communicating effectively on this issue because it is a sensitive one. What I put when I reshared the caucus post about ending DEI with this bill was what I believe is that the equal rights movement has been hijacked, right? By self-serving actors or charities or non-governmental organizations to self-fund their lifestyles, okay? And I'm not going to name them all because it's a long, long list.
Yeah.
But what this does, it gets us back to treating everyone fairly in the eyes of the law and equality.
Or as Martin Luther King said.
Yeah.
Based on the content of your character, not the color of your skin.
Right.
And they just added in sexual orientation, all this other stuff that has no merit.
Right.
Based or has no.
So the intent with this is just to end those things. It's not. This is not an anti-civil rights issue. This is not.
And this following Trump's executive order.
Yeah, and that's all this is. So this is. I'm not going to be speaking ugly about this. I know some folks. This is going to get heated, I'm sure, when this debate comes to the House floor. But I want to go ahead and preempt that. That's not what it is for I know me. And I'm sure not for you either. It's more about creating a level playing field.
I'm going to go ahead and call it now. There's going to be plenty of opportunity for people to get their going viral moment from the well that week.
Yeah.
Whenever we start debating this bill. So just look and see. I mean, you know, we've got a majority in the House, a super majority. So, to me, there's not even too much reason to debate it.
I know.
This should just be taken care of.
Yep. Another bill that was read across is House Bill 3926. And we've talked about this, is basically the South Carolina DOGE. It's basically what you're seeing on Twitter all over the place right now that's, you know, creating or initiating protests amongst opponents of DOGE.
But really it's about government efficiency and transparency.
That's right.
And we, the Republican caucus throughout our agenda has been focused on DOGE. Truthfully, even before it really picked up all the steam of the recent headlines. I mean, I remember having meetings early December talking about government efficiency in the department. I mean, we've got numerous bills, but this is a joint resolution to let everyone know this is what we're doing. Right.
And so I look forward to that. I mean, again, having those conversations with Julius and then seeing what the current Trump administration is doing on a national level to find that waste, fraud, and abuse. I'll be interested to see how that operates here in the state of South Carolina.
And for any of my constituents, please don't email me about whatever's going on the federal level. I've been so busy in the State House. I don't have time to keep up with the headlines. But I can't tell you how, if I just search the word Trump in my email.
So if you do have some, whether it's support or some frustration with what's going on the national level, if you're in York County, that is a question or a letter or an email to Congressman Ralph Norman.
Yes. Or one of your senators.
Yeah, his office can probably help you and give you some sort of federal response that's not in our wheelhouse. We can talk about it.
Yeah, but whenever you send me an email and say, why haven't you done this? It's like, because I'm not in Congress.
So, but another one I wanted to just let the two listeners know about, it is coming up this week. Y'all, as members of LCI, y'all had
the energy bill.
The energy bill come through subcommittee, pass through full committee with 5-6 amendments on them. That is the second attempt by the House.
Last year, they spent an entire year reviewing, studying. Then whenever the bill was brought to the floor, it went to the Senate and did not pass.
That was one of those occasions where we beat the Senate to the punch. Senators got a little upset, didn't want to give us the spotlight. And
No, I mean, they felt like they didn't have the proper amount of time to study it the way that we did.
Kidding, senators. Tongue in cheek. But that's House Bill 3309. That reforms the Public Service Commission to provide stronger oversight.
And the biggest change there,
Yep.
just for the listeners, whenever we issued the original bill, we were changing the Public Service Commission from 7 members, which is 1 for each congressional district, down to 3. And the point of that was so we could pay 3 people that are more qualified. If you're an expert in the energy field, you need to be paid if you're going to serve on this board because we want your expertise. However, we didn't feel like we could do that with the 7 members. But overwhelming testimony during committee, that was one of the biggest concerns. So we went back to make sure every congressional district has a representative on the board, and we are going to increase the pay to match that of our circuit court judges. And that will...
look, folks, that's a job.
Yes, it says it's full-time, and you can't do anything else. So you cannot be part of another committee or another profession, and you cannot advocate based on other things.
And another key component of this energy bill, again, that's House Bill 3309. It encourages investment in nuclear and renewable to keep costs low and ensure long-term reliability, and expands energy transmission and storage capacity to support our growing communities. Another important feature of this bill, which I was happy to see, was it it streamlines the permitting process.
Yes.
I think the average length of time currently is 6 years.
Well, it was about 10 once you got the appeal filed, which automatically would add on 3 to 4 years every single time. Whether you won the appeal or not, it was a 3 to 4 year process.
Yeah.
And then you had to add in the additional time. So you're looking at a decade before you could actually get something done.
Yeah.
Well, according to all the statistics, within 8 years at our current growth, and this does not even include the data center conversation or anything else.
Yeah.
This is just based on population growth. We're one of the best
Aging
states to move
infrastructure
to.
too,
Yes.
that will come offline in those 8 to 10 years. That's right. So it takes into a lot of things. So we have got to get this going. We got to get streamlined, and I think the goal is to have permitting processes down to about 9 months.
It's the main reason I chose to move over to LCI. I guess I can go back now. But no, I wanted to go to LCI so we could focus on energy because I understand the importance of it for South Carolina to remain at the forefront.
Right.
And week one, our first bill coming out of full committee.
So look forward to seeing that robust debate on Wednesday.
And there were about 7 amendments all in all on that bill.
And that's what we talked about in the midweek SIPs. Brandon was going to have to take his shoe off if we got any more amendments because But another thing that we talked about, we welcomed nurses.
Yes.
South Carolina Nurses Association came and saw us on Thursday. A couple of them came to visit each of us separately. We also had some community healthcare workers come in and visit us on Thursday. So it was a healthcare themed.
Yeah. And I had students come down from York Comprehensive High School that are focusing on a mental health initiative. And they used the less than 3 symbol and then put "You Matter" as their slogan. And it's to let these teens that are struggling with mental health, let them know that they're not alone.
Yeah.
And there's other peer support amongst them. And I thought it was a worthy cause. I wanted to make sure I recognized them, gave them a tour of the State House.
Yeah. That was great.
Really touches your heartstrings whenever you see the youth standing up and fighting for what's most important.
This episode of Pints and Politics is brought to you by Comer Distributing. Comer Distributing Company is a wholesale beer distributor located in Rock Hill, South Carolina. Founded in 1971, Comer is a family-owned business that distributes beer and other beverages to York, Chester, Fairfield, Lancaster, Kershaw, Lexington, and Richland counties.
All right, welcome back, Pints and Politics. What are we, episode 48 now?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Yep, 48.
And our special guest today, that earlier in the segment we talked about having a special guest come on, and
the man, the myth, the legend. You might know him of Susan Smith fame.
If you're a grandmother,
maybe from the hottest man alive.
I got a lot going on here.
Hey, listen, I had all that queued up in the intro for your nomination for Pro Tem this year. But when Merle talked about this is a respectful, austere body, I thought it was going to be inappropriate. So I really had some more remarks for you in my intro. I just want to say that.
The fact that I told the midwives in the balcony my story about the baby being born at the house while I was on court TV, and all I got was that was really just a plug to point out I was on court TV. Didn't matter that my grandson was born and the nurse midwife was downstairs. So.
Well, we, you bring an expertise to the conversation of especially our judicial race here in the 16th Circuit than what Guffey and I can provide. We can provide some of our personal perspectives, but you having your legal background, we thought this would be a great opportunity for us to have this discussion, explaining the unique sort of vote we took this past week, this Wednesday, regarding the 16th Circuit election. So tell the two listeners sort of
the two listeners
how we arrived.
Have they gotten their beer yet? Do we need to give them a second to go to the refrigerator? So in South Carolina, and we always hear complaints, but in South Carolina, the legislature elects the judges. And people say, well, other states, don't do it that way. But if you look right above us in North Carolina, they elect their judges like we get elected. And it's fraught with peril from the standpoint of they've got to raise funds. They normally have to talk about judges. have to raise funds to run campaigns just like we do. And so we really have a good process, but it needs some tweaking. Ironically, for whatever reason in York County, we have really received some of the worst of the system. I don't mean people-wise, but the outcomes and the screening process. And it really started a couple races ago. And we've had some candidates by the committee that were said to be unqualified. We've had some candidates by the bar. It's ironic, they're practicing attorneys. They may be involved in the judiciary, on a different level. And so it's just been unfortunate for York County that it hadn't been as simple as having a handful of good candidates. I may be the elder of this three. I know it's close, but, when I was, first a solicitor back when we didn't have electricity, back when I was a solicitor, running for a judgeship was a big deal and people vied for that. And what you would normally see would be attorneys maybe that had kind of had their career and now, were financially secure. And this was an opportunity almost to give back to the community. And now I think partly because of the nature of our system, a lot of good attorneys, don't run for it. But anyway, going to this week, what had happened, we ended up ultimately, much like the last election we ended up with one candidate. York County is conservative, and it's no disrespect to that one candidate. I think Melissa Inzarello did nothing wrong. She ran a good race. I've known her for years from the public defender's office. But, at the end of the day, we've got a conservative county. I thought it was real telling. One of the attorneys that was on the review committee, Pete Strom, who's a friend of mine, his father was the chief at SLED when I started down at SLED. He told Melissa that, York County sentencing is an anomaly. And he said, you don't have to sentence so harshly like they do in York County, as you go around the state.
Yeah.
And I laughed.
Kind of what we like.
Hey, look, and that was on the record. I mean, that was in that 500-something page transcript of all the interviews of all the judicial candidates that we nominated, like 51 that we nominated or elected.
It reminded me, I told somebody back, so I get elected by way of history. You guys know this. I got elected solicitor when I was 30 years old. I ran against the incumbent. And I'd probably been prosecuted about 3 years. They said I was too young. Really, I probably was, but they had the worst backlog in the state. And so I laughed. I said, I didn't know people saw merit in me. I was a former SLED agent. I was a prosecutor. Or they figured, heck, you can't do any worse. He got the worst backlog in the state. So I get elected and, we start tackling that backlog. And I remember I have York and Union counties, and Betty Miller, who's still up at the solicitor's office in York, was down in Union County. And there was a judge, Judge Pieper, who had gone on the bench from down in Charleston. And Judge Pieper would make notes of every sentence he gave, almost like a grid or something. He was trying to find kind of the commonalities in his sentences and stuff. And he called me into his office and he said, Solicitor, I noticed, and I don't even remember the charge, it might have been an embezzlement or something, but he said, I noticed in Union County, for whatever the charge was, they get 7 years. The plea offer 7 years. He said, and I noticed up here in York County, it's only 5. He said, I need you to rectify that. And I said, well, I'm going to call Betty Miller down in Union, come up here and tell our people how we can start getting 7 instead of 5. So, luckily, we've been a law and order county. We always laugh, here at my civil practice, the very thing that makes York County good for law and order makes it sometimes tougher on civil cases. So it's a trade-off, but we are a conservative county and we need the opportunity to have conservative judges. Mm-hmm. And so again, this week was not pleasant for me from the standpoint I'm friends with, because of being in the bar and I'm friends with people both sides. Again, I can't say enough, nice about Melissa, but we just needed some choices.
Right. And that was some of my conversations with our colleagues in the House was like, why are y'all voting her down? JMSC, ruled her out as qualified. And I said, so we still have the responsibility and the duty as the elected representatives of York County to vote.
Qualified doesn't mean elected.
Well, I like the point you made the other day. Said if you're going to say they're qualified and that's all that matters and we get one candidate, why do we even vote on it? Just let this handful of people picked
Yeah.
and let them be kingmakers.
I was like, if that's the, the go-to, then save us the stress and the headaches and the meeting with 100 some odd candidates over 2.5 weeks. Let's just go ahead and let JMSC handle it then.
Well, so whenever I ran on judicial reform. Whenever Merle tasked us with setting up the Judicial Reform Committee, Tommy was chairman of it. I learned a lot about the process that I didn't understand previously.
Right.
I thought we had the worst system in the world. And what I found out from listening to people from all across the country is our system is good, but some of those checks and balances need to be worked out.
Right.
And as we were going through, the whole point of that, whenever we wrapped up, was to have numerous candidates.
Right.
And to kind of eliminate all of the counting and all of these people dropping out. I just found it very funny. This was the last hurrah under the old system.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden it felt like we were handcuffed. And it was almost, to me, it felt like it was almost like, we'll show you.
Right. Well, and that's some of the things for the two listeners who do regularly watch or listen to the show. Let's back up a little bit, because during this process, we had 2 candidates, and once there was a bar assessment, right, sort of portion of the process, and what occurred was Jen, one of the candidates, withdraws because the bar assessment came back with a lot of anonymous negative feedback, right? And we've never even seen this bar report. We don't know, but it was negative enough that she did not want to risk a professional career,
Jeopardized her career and her family,
or her resume, or these things. You know what I mean? And I'm sensitive to that, and so she withdrew, and that left us in the predicament of which we found ourselves, of only having one candidate. And
to be fair,
but now hold on, before we go any further, didn't the anonymous negative bar assessment come up in y'all's judicial reform sort of meetings? Because Robbie Robbins, who is a representative down in Somerville, who is also an attorney, when him and I got to talking about it, I learned that he said, Heath, this is one of the worst parts of the judicial process and how we elect judges, is that if someone applies and goes through this interview process with JMSC and then gets sort of the bar review or bar assessment portion, and that runs negative, he goes, they should put their name on it.
Yeah.
They should have to own that, because if they make some claims that result in unprofessional or unethical behavior or statements, then the person who's saying the negative stuff about a candidate could be held responsible or accountable for misleading statements or untrue statements.
Well, and the flip side of that, technically, if I think that you're unethical or having unethical conduct, as a lawyer, I'm bound to report you. Now, as a practical matter, you would really have to do something pretty egregious for me to jeopardize, even though you and I may be button heads in the courtroom, for me to jeopardize your career.
Yeah.
But we actually saw it, and it's ironic. It's so much to unpack for your listeners. But there's just, we've got a good system, we've got a good structure. It's going to be better next time. We're bringing some sunlight to more things. But I mean, we had another candidate that wasn't our race that basically got forced out through allegations that not only were they unfounded, SLED had investigated them. That was the folks over in Lexington. Yeah. And that guy finally gets pressured so much that he and so I hate to say it, but Greg Delaney, the former representative down in Chester, used to always say, no matter what you do, you can't ever take the politics out of anything. Mm-hmm. And I think there's some truth, but I think what we're seeing and what we set to prevent with our committee is some of the bleed over. Think how politics is now. Again, you young whippersnappers, you don't know, but even 10 years ago, I mean, the negativity of politics now, we look at it with the Freedom Caucus stuff or whatever. It wasn't like that. Neither was running, we could all three run for office and we could ride in a car together. It's not me against you, but it's bleeding over. But, it's the first time we had problems was we had a candidate run against a sitting judge up here and they only had 2 candidates, and they say that the one candidate, who ironically was also a judge up here, was unqualified. That was the lawyer legislature, the little group you're talking
Yeah.
about that said that they were unqualified. And that wasn't right, because either she sure was qualified to do her job 5 minutes before she decided to run against this judge. So, so that's not, so again, we kind of felt, or at least I felt this week, we were kind of vilified for being the one. I don't want to be a guy that votes no. I want to be a guy that votes for something. But we were hamstrung in that regard, and we were very fortunate that like-minded individuals in the legislature saw it the same way we did, and I think they gave respect to our area and our issues. But it's not that we didn't catch some hell in trying to get to the other side of it.
And what I was going to say earlier, what people don't understand is we take account for the votes. So that way, if the judges know that they don't have a vote, they don't continue to come up there. They're not continuing to, you know, earn these votes.
Yeah, it's basically like a straw poll.
Right.
You do a straw poll.
We gave the opportunity to Ms. Inzarello to let her know you do not have the votes. You don't want to go to the floor with this.
You're right.
And you're not going to be confirmed, and yet still chose to take it to the floor. You know, on her side, it was, well, you know, and she didn't directly say this, but other people did. If I can't win whenever I'm the only person on here, then what chance do I have in the future? Well, there's numerous seats that can come available that you may be more qualified for.
Yeah.
And to me, it was, I felt like there was not a fair process. And the fair process is the first thing that you have to qualify for. The second thing would be whether I think that you're going to represent the 16th Circuit.
Right.
And if I can't get past 1, I can't even get down to 2.
Yeah. And I think that was, the process lacked integrity.
Yeah.
That was clear from the outset when one of the 2 candidates withdrew in December of last year. I'm not an attorney. That's when I started paying attention to what's going on in this process that caused one of the candidates who had already interviewed with JMSC, then the bar assessment goes negative on her, and she then reluctantly withdraws, right?
I didn't like the fact that we only had 2.
Well, I was going to say,
and so that to that point, that's when I started paying attention and started really looking into what was happening during the application process and the interview process up to now. And I started having just troubling conversations about that.
I still remember whenever the whole bar review part come out, I was driving back from West Virginia. And I was talking to you on the phone for about 45 minutes, and I missed my exit and went 45 minutes the wrong
You
way.
went 64 minutes to
I was just running my mouth
77.
all
Yeah, that's right.
I've been there before. You know, a couple observations. I think, you know, you can take these little pockets of fault, but it was almost like the perfect storm in the negative. We should have had, as you just said a minute ago, we should have had more candidates to start with. And I think, you know, people just talking about what we've talked about, why would you ever want to run? You know, when you hear all you have to go through and the chances of the heartbreak she faced or whatever else. But I think wanting conservative candidates, a robust election, whether it's for us or anybody else, is a healthy thing. And I think we need more candidates. I think a mistake was probably made too when one candidate runs and they think that's the conservative candidate. And before the machine ever starts cranking up, everybody else kind of goes, well, that's the person that's going to be it. One, our ethical rules don't allow that, so nobody can ever be guaranteed being it. But I think we've got to look at that. And I've said this every time I've gotten the chance. I absolutely, you know, we've opened it up. You were asking about reforms. We've opened it up to having 6 candidates reported out, and I hope we have 6 candidates. As tough as it is, because you kind of hinted on it. Talking to these people, if they're going to be courageous enough to run, you know, we're going to be courageous enough to talk to them. We have to do our due diligence.
And I've never met a judicial candidate that I didn't like. So it's very tough for someone that's not. I don't practice law.
Yeah, right.
So I'm having to go off of what a lot of people say, and it's very unfair the way that the media plays a role in this now. And another example was, you know, you saw many of the Freedom Caucus members reject Thomas Rhode just because he's in the same practice as Robbie Robbins. Now, Robbie recused himself and didn't vote in the race, but that whole narrative that you're corrupt just because you're in office doesn't mean that
Right.
Ben couldn't run for a judge at some time. You're not giving up the rights of other individuals, and it's wrong to
It's
even
been tricky.
paint people that way.
It's
Well,
been-
and I think just as Tommy was talking about earlier, the political environment of which we operate, it seems to be pretty normal now to have some folks who are on that Freedom Party side throw out things like corrupt and on the take and all those types
No
of things.
shit. You're saying they lie?
They say that all the
Simmer down
time.
now.
And, you know, we were at a York, the local party, and I heard that from numerous of their members about how House leadership is corrupt and we're selling taxpayers down the river and all that kind of stuff. And this room had about 85, 100 people in it.
Yeah.
Did you notice not one person raised their hand and said, where's your proof?
No one asked a question.
Where's the receipts? Right? No one asked any of that. No accountability for these claims whatsoever. Just irresponsible language being used.
They
And
call that slander.
to impugn folks' character
Yeah.
or to insinuate that the Republican caucus, of which we're all members, they're corrupt. They're on the take. They're swamped. And, you know, we're all standing over there. I'm like, are you kidding me? We're right here.
Yeah.
And no one said, do you guys want to respond to these?
They don't want that.
Well, I was going to say it's confirmation bias. You know, they decided what they want to believe, and they only seek out things that do it. So
Jeff
you know,
Davis
that
told
confirm
them,
it,
then the
yeah.
Freedom Caucus told them, so it must be true.
And I don't want to digress into that ditch, but
Oh.
to that point, you know, the narrative a lot of times from our opposition within our own party, we might want to think that the Freedom Party is their own party. They're not Republicans, but that's for another episode. Let's go to the race for the at-large circuit court race between Vic Metz, Grant Gibbons, and Jane Merrill, because this was an interesting race once I saw the outcome. This was a race that started with 3 people, went 3 wide, which I enjoyed, which that's what I think our new judicial reform will offer us next year. I think you're going to have 2 or 3 candidates every race where you have to at least go to a vote, and that third person who gets only 20 to 30 votes drops out, and that swings, right? And that's what I saw happen on that race. Because if you remember, I believe Vic Metz out of Marion came up with like 55, 60 votes. Jane Merrill had around, 40, 45? And then Grant had around 20 to 25. And when Grant Gibbons dropped out, everyone in the room's assuming, oh, Vic's got it now. And the opposite happened.
Went to Merrill.
Those folks who were with Grant the first time around swung to Jane Merrill out of Greenwood, right?
Mhm.
And she ended up winning 84-74. But here was the kicker for me. You had House leadership, except for you,
Yeah.
really. I mean, because you had the speaker,
Yeah.
you had the majority leader, assistant majority leader, judiciary chair, a judiciary subcommittee chair, all voting for Metz. And York County, a lot of us in York County, and another 70 some odd people went for Jane Merrill.
Yeah.
And I didn't pay attention to how anybody else was voting
And
during that process.
And so that race for me was a sign that that's Republicans right there. And what I mean by that is Republicans are like Baptists. You know what I mean? We all want to have our own individual thoughts and this, that, and the other. We can come under one big tent, but we're still going to be free thinkers. And you got this narrative from the Freedom Party side who says we're lockstep going with leadership. Well, that vote for Jane Merrill to be on the bench threw that out the
We
window.
weren't in the uniparty anymore.
That's
were we?
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I just thought that was fascinating to see. Just
if I
Rankin-
watch the board to see how someone votes, I'm just watching Rutherford and going the opposite way.
That'll work. That'll work too.
So
You know, one thing before we leave the whole election, particularly locally too, and kind of tied in with the reform, you know, some of the reform actually, like the governor's appointees, will be attorneys. So I think there's one thing important to recognize, that attorney input is going to be important. I'm not saying it just because I'm the only attorney sitting here,
Yeah.
but you know, much like if it was banking and we had the banking board or whatever. And so I think the system is still going to go through your local bar. In other words, go through the people that knows these people.
Your trade association.
You know, exactly. I think you're still going to have that input. I think it's important. We just need to make sure that it's not subject to usage as a weapon as opposed to just gathering information.
Right.
And, you know,
like,
and
don't tip the scale.
And it wasn't just York County. Like I said, we saw various maneuvers, even when they were proven wrong in that Lexington race,
Mm-hmm.
you know, that ultimately drive a candidate out. And which brings me full circle back to what used to be an honorable and desired position. People don't want to run the gauntlet. Just like we talk about, people don't want to run anymore because you're dealing on social media with all the BS that you could explain, but you
Right.
not have any time to do anything else. Well,
Yeah.
some people don't have any problem responding, but I would be the exception.
I've been a little busy for the past couple of weeks to respond.
Hey,
faster.
and you know, to that point, Tommy, you know, if you're renovating a bathroom, you're going to call your local contractor that you know. You're going to call that buddy who's a handyman to get a name of somebody who's reputable and good. That's what I look for in the bar, right?
Mm-hmm.
But I think in our particular race in the 16th, it just, in my judgment, it seemed that it rose above that, right? It wasn't sort of guidance. It was, no, we're picking, you know?
Yeah.
And that's another message that I think our vote sends is that, look, we look for our bar to advise and guide our decisions, but ultimately that's our responsibility as
Constitutionally.
elected officials to vote. Just because JMSC reports them out doesn't mean they're entitled to the bench. Just because the bar disagrees with how we vote doesn't mean, you know what I mean? So I think folks just need to remember that. We are the end part of that process.
For better or worse.
That's
Without-
right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
So
I always tell candidates, you know, I said, you know, I get to go to Walmart and beg for votes. I said, you are here with the crack cocaine of politics. You're having to politic the politicians, you know. They always give that sweaty, nervous laugh.
Yeah.
But,
So what are some of the, in the last few minutes we got here, what are some of the key reforms that you two look forward to seeing and how that impacts the races?
My biggest thing was how we choose magistrates. I'd love to see that change now that we have a supermajority.
Well, let's focus on the reforms we made.
yeah. That
I
is
thought you
a,
was asking in the future,
No,
but I
that
still
is-
want to do some things.
that is an episode for another day, Jim. And I'll be glad to come back. I got a lot on that one. Well, they traditionally reported out 3, and what used to be difficult, and this is a long time with me dealing, you know, as a solicitor with the judicial elections and then the legislature. It used to be they deal out to 3, and you could tell that little small cadre of attorneys, legislators were picking winners and losers.
Right.
So we used to laugh. We'd call the 3 they'd report out. It'd be the mod squad. You know, they'd report the guy they wanted, the African American lady, you know, and whatever else one I'm missing now, you know. So the guy and the female, you know, there was this whole combination. So they've touched all the bases, or they'll put the guy, you know, say you had 6 in the hopper, you can't report 3, and these 3 are really equal and would all do a good job. Only one of those will get reported out. These 2 won't. So it kind of becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy.
And them picking their judge.
Yeah.
That was
Yeah.
the biggest
De
problem.
facto.
Yeah.
What about, how do you see the governor's appointments, you know, coming onto the JMSC? So for the 2 listeners, the old way was 5 from the Senate, 5 from the House. Each 5 had to have 3 that were members of the chamber.
Mhm.
So 3 House members, 3 senators, and on each side, the president would appoint 2, and that could be outside the body,
Right.
and the speaker would appoint 2. Now, the governor gets to appoint.
Yeah,
4?
yeah. So we went up. Yeah, I think it's 4, 4, and 4 now. I believe. I should have
Yeah.
refreshed my recollection.
But
before we came.
but now we're getting the executive branch in the boat with us.
We're getting them, and I think as much as anything, and you know, his will be attorneys and from out in the community, and so I think it just gives you a little removal from the hardcore face-in legislative process. You know,
Yeah.
so not that we hope all our members aren't objective, but it just. One, I think it throws in more of an appearance of objectivity,
Right.
and may, you know, quite candidly hold, you know, some of our guys a little more accountable on, like, I don't want to say deal making, but
Yeah.
you know,
Well,
king making.
One of the
Right.
problems of choosing judges, as I'm sitting there, like I said, I meet these candidates. I don't know who
unless I'm practicing law, it's very difficult to know. And as we're going through the questions, I'm relying on the experience of our senators and Tommy, and now we have Everett, who's an attorney.
So wait a minute, Brandon Guffey is relying on loyal legislators, is what he's saying.
They're the experts within my community.
In this limited exception, as his attorney, I'll tell you that's what he means.
Yeah. But the last one I wanted to touch on was now. So our old system was at a Tuesday at noon, a judge could go get commitments, and they had a week or a little over a week. Was it?
Yeah, we're trying to, or
2 weeks.
And the problem too, they were giving out the report that supposedly all this research is created, and then 5 seconds later you can commit to somebody.
Yeah, right. 500 pages.
So what we tried to build it, and the difficulty I'm having, I know that perfect bill we crafted, and I know when the conference committee got through and the Senate got through with some of the things they did, but I know that we want time for either you. I laughed when we were having that deliberation the other day on the bill, and on the rules bill, and they were complaining. We didn't have time to read it. Which sounds shocking, but it sounds shocking. We didn't have time to read it, but you had time to draw up an amendment. How did you know what to amend if you didn't read it?
Yeah.
Well, it's kind of the same thing. You can't gripe about the judge qualifications or not if you don't even read the report, and it's voluminous.
Yeah.
But
Almost 600 pages.
But so
and
we're building in
Tommy's
time to do it.
That report came to us Monday night or Tuesday morning, and then judges at noon.
It was very short. Maybe it came Friday, and it's in your box when you get in Monday or Tuesday.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, it was very short.
And then Tuesday at noon, you can start getting commitments. I think the new way now says for that first week or so, judges still can't get commitments. So it allows us a little bit of grace period to where we can do some reviews. We can bring the candidates in, talk to them, get to know them a little more before feeling like we have to commit.
Yeah, now you only have 48 hours.
Yeah.
And we wanted to eliminate commitments too, because we'd have to do another episode to tell you when I first got there and thinking, okay, I'll help you. You're running for a judge. And, I start doing my little sheet and counting the damn races over 10 minutes after it started. I'm going, how could that humanly be possible if you couldn't commit till earlier?
Yeah, right.
So there's still going to be room for improvement. But it was a tough week. I think I want to tell your listeners, all two of them, that you guys worked really hard for York County. I know, with you guys being newer, y'all worked your list, you've built the relationships, the people you talked to that supported us from around the state, who quite candidly didn't have a dog in the fight. And everybody I've talked to, I've given credit for the hard work y'all put in.
Yeah.
Thank you. And I think it shows some of the respect that we have earned within the body whenever people are just listening to the outside narrative and say, they don't really understand or agree with that.
Right.
We're saying, look, we're not coming in your backyard.
That is correct.
So stay out of ours.
We have spent our first term developing relationships, and those relationships matter. So when you go and ask someone to stand with you for say, a local judge race, they say, hey, man, that's y'all's race. Y'all are going to deal with the good, bad, and the ugly if you've got a judge who's making bad legal decisions, right? And so a lot of times there's that courtesy and that respect, but also you've got time in. Tommy's got, 20, 30 years?
180.
In the legislature to develop those relationships. But yeah, I think that says a lot about the members of York County for sure. So, well, Tommy, thanks for joining us.
I enjoyed it, guys.
Thank you
I
for your
appreciate it.
court
Thank you,
TV
pal.
legal
Appreciate it.
expertise.
And we're filming today in Elrod Poop
Welcome to
Studios.
Elrod Pope, Accident and Injury Attorney. Sponsored to you by Chip Comer and Elrod Pope.
Well, another episode in the books, man.
Yeah, man. We're getting up there.
I think we're getting better at this too. We're maybe getting comfortable with.
I still sound like the redneck describing the tornado whenever I hear it, but I got to where I don't even listen to the podcast because I don't want to hear myself talk.
Well, thanks for listening, y'all. Again, go out and support Comer Distributing where you can.
Yes.
Also, Elrod Pope, if you need a accident or injury attorney, stop by and see him, and make sure you ask for Tommy.
Don't make them chase the ambulance. You call them.
And again, looking forward to next week. You got anything besides? We talked about legislation. I know we got the energy bill coming up.
Man, I've been busy filming, working on documentaries, to getting Gavin's story out. So looking ahead is very difficult right now.
yeah. I know we're doing a lot of committee work, and I think we'll have some highlights or some announcements for this Wednesday SIP.
Yes.
So I've got some things brewing on my side of the building and having really good conversations with some other members.
And you're kicking ass and taking names in 3M.
No.
And that medical sub.
Yeah, that's right. I did get that first one underneath my belt.
Yeah.
I tell you, another big thank you to all the staff that make us prepared when we go to, whether it's committees or preparing bills and legislation or just for debate, right?
Yeah.
So, because
I've said it before. You don't want me writing the bill. I'm better at reading and amending.
Yeah. So a little teaser. I'm going to have an announcement on the midweek SIPs this week. So stay tuned. But again, thank you for watching another episode.
Yeah, and please continue to support us. If you follow us on social media, give us a like, give us a share.
Yeah, and always go subscribe.
Plenty of reels. Yeah, always subscribe if you can. And visit us, and if you're not on social media, visit us at pintsandpolitics.show.
Yep.
And you can follow us on any of your favorite streaming channels.
Yep, and if you ever want to check out our websites as far as looking at a voting record or what we stand for or what our passions are, you can see mine at heathsessions.com.
You can see mine at brandonguffey.com.
All right, thanks again for the episode. Y'all have a good week.
Have a good one.